In our headlines on this Monday, October 14th, here in South Korea. Tensions are mounting on the peninsula as Pyongyang prepares to demolish the northern parts of the inter-Korean roads, while its soldiers are ordered to take up shooting positions along the border. Meanwhile, South Korea logs a surplus of almost $10 billion in its trade of ICT products in September, as exports rake in over $22 billion and imports post $12.5 billion. And in the Middle East, Israeli ground forces are accused of exposing UN peacekeeping positions and premises in southern Lebanon to danger, fueling much international concern. Pyongyang appears poised to put into practice its earlier threat to demolish all land links between the two Koreas. Our Kim Bo-kyung covers the mounting tensions on the Korean peninsula.
North Korea appears to be getting ready to blow up roads along the Gyeonggi and Donghae railway lines connecting the two Koreas. During Monday's briefing, the Joint Chiefs of Staff confirmed as such.
They have installed barriers on the roads, and activities behind those barriers are being identified. Preparatory work is underway to blow them up. I believe it could happen as soon as today.
In response to the regime's increasing threats, South Korean military has reportedly strengthened surveillance and its readiness posture, though the JCS did not confirm further details. The reclusive state is already said to have launched a project last week to cut off roads and railways. But such activities have been reported after the General Staff of the North Korean People's Army delivered an Operation Preparatory Directive to artillery combined forces near the border and units assigned important firepower missions to be ready for full-scale shooting by Saturday at 8 p.m. The regime's urge for such readiness comes as Pyongyang had claimed on Friday night that Seoul sent unmanned aerial vehicles carrying propaganda leaflets to its capital on October 3rd, 9th, and 10th. South Korea first denied sending drones, but later held an ambiguous stance. Kim Ye-jung, the sister of the regime's leader, warned on Sunday that Seoul would face a horrible disaster if South Korean drones are flown over the North's capital again. Saying the North isn't concerned about who the main force is behind the recent drone incident, Kim added that it would take strong retaliatory action if drones carrying anti-regime leaflets infiltrate the regime's territory again. The South's defense ministry released a response, warning the reclusive state on Sunday that it will see the end of the regime if it causes any harm to its people. U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Kurt Campbell has a scheduled visit to Seoul on Wednesday and is set to hold a vice-ministerial meeting with South Korean and Japanese counterparts regarding North Korea's ongoing provocations. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
And against the backdrop of heightened tensions here on the Korean peninsula, prospects of a trilateral summit involving South Korea, Japan and the U.S. are looking likely later next month. Our senior correspondent Oh Soo-young reports.
South Korea, the United States and Japan are leaning towards holding a leaders' summit soon after the US presidential election and multilateral summits in mid-November, according to President Yoon Suk-yeol's office. National Security Advisor Shin Won-sik said in a broadcast interview on Sunday that while a leaders' summit between the three countries is physically difficult before the APEC and G20 conferences in mid-November, there's a growing consensus that it should take place as soon as possible. This comes after US President Joe Biden proposed holding a three-way summit to build on the Camp David spirit, reflecting on their landmark meeting last year. The message was conveyed to the South Korean leader through Secretary of State Antony Blinken on Thursday, according to Yoon's office. At their Camp David summit, Yoon, Biden and then Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida agreed to institutionalize trilateral cooperation on deterring North Korea and on other strategic areas such as economic security, supply chains and technology, as well as consult each other on regional security challenges. While Yoon and the new Japanese leader Shigeru Ishiba last week agreed on furthering efforts to advance their ties, the future of the so-called Camp David mechanism depends on political leadership from all three sides. So all eyes are on the upcoming US presidential race next month.
I think a lot of it is going to depend on who's in Washington. because as we've seen with Biden, he wants to help facilitate this coming together of South Korea and Japan. And I'm sure President Harris would do that too. But if Trump is president, he's going to be going at each of these countries individually over burden sharing costs, trade, or whatnot, and there won't be as much of a push or a forum created from Washington to have the two leaders get together.
Still, the expert is optimistic that the three countries may be compelled to maintain their partnership as long as the Russia-China-North Korea axis endures.
So on the economic and the institutional isolation, I want to see some more substance, but so long as Beijing, Moscow, and Pyongyang keep up their antics, there will be a strong urge and natural coalescence among the three.
Amid North Korea's continued provocations and rhetoric aimed at South Korea, the National Security Advisor shrugged off speculation that North Korea is preparing for war, asserting that Pyongyang will not start a war unless it decides to commit suicide. Saying it's best to ignore the North's recent claims that Seoul sent drones to Pyongyang, he said what Kim Jong-un fears the most are internal threats, and has likely played up the sense of threat domestically to tighten the regime's control. Regarding the possibility of North Korea conducting its 7th nuclear test, Shin forecast that North Korea would choose a strategically favourable time that maximises impact, possibly around the time of the US presidential election. Oh Si-young, Arirang News.
Defense delegates from South Korea, Australia, Japan and New Zealand, also known as the Indo-Pacific Four, are scheduled to sit down on the margins of the NATO Defense Ministerial meeting in Brussels this coming Thursday and Friday. According to a number of media outlets here, on the agenda of this inaugural gathering of the IP4 nations are ways to promote partnership with NATO members. Now, this gathering also reportedly comes at the request of Australia. Vice Defense Minister Kim Sun-ho will attend the gathering. President Yoon Suk-yeol has named his former and first Chief of Staff Kim Dae-gi as ambassador to China. Current Chief of Staff Chung Jin-seok earlier on this Monday cited Kim's past experiences in economic initiatives with China, including the bilateral free trade agreement, as proof of his competence, adding that Kim's expertise will serve to further enhance cooperation. Kim has also served as the Commissioner for Statistics Korea and was the former Chief of Staff for Policy under the Lee Myung-bak administration. Korea's exports of ICT products soared on year in September, driven by chip sales overseas to rake in over $22 billion. Our correspondent Moon Hae-ryun has more.
Strong semiconductor exports due to the AI boom once again led South Korea's tech shipments overseas. Data from the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy showed that ICT exports in September rose by 24% compared to the same month the year before, adding up to $22.36 billion. This is the second highest amount for a month's worth of ICT exports on record and marks the 11th consecutive month that the country's tech exports recorded a year-on-year increase. The ministry attributed this to a rise in demand for chips in the artificial intelligence sector. The total value of semiconductor exports last month recorded an all-time high, coming in at more than $13.6 billion, once again recording growth in the double digits. This is showcased by exports of memory chips, including high-bandwidth memory semiconductors, which show significant growth of more than 60% year-on-year. As for other tech exports, computers and computer accessories surged by more than double year-on-year, while mobile phone shipments climbed by more than 25% on the back of the release of the foldable Galaxy Z series from Samsung Electronics in July, which continued its popularity into September. However, exports of displays and telecommunication equipment saw a decline. By country, tech exports to China, South Korea's main destination for ICT shipments, accounting for more than 41% of the total, continue to grow for the 11th month in a row. Shipments to the United States also rose by nearly 40% year-on-year, particularly for computer storage devices such as SSDs, which jumped by more than 250%. Meanwhile, ICT imports came to around $12.5 billion, leaving the ICT trade balance in the black once more. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News.
On the international front, Israeli ground forces have been accused of exposing UN peacekeeping positions and premises in southern Lebanon to danger, fueling much international concern. Our Choi Soo-young has the latest.
The Israeli military claimed it found a tunnel linked to a Hezbollah weapons cache and a secret base near the border, which could have been used to blow up a wall adjacent to a United Nations peacekeeper base. This followed a UN statement on Sunday that said Israeli tanks had burst into one of its peacekeeper bases in southern Lebanon. The UN interim force there said 2 Israeli tanks destroyed the main gate of the base and forced their way into it. UNIFIL added that after the tanks left, shells exploded some 100 meters away, releasing smoke that sickened a number of UN personnel. However, Israel says Hezbollah had fired anti-tank missiles at Israeli troops and the tanks that had been helping evacuate casualties under fire before backing into the UNIFIL post unintentionally. The Israeli military's international spokesperson stressed that tanks were trying to get out of harm's way, adding that the maneuver could not be considered storming a base. Following the incident, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu called on the UN to immediately remove its peacekeeping force from the region. Directing his statement to UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres, the Israeli leader said Hezbollah was using the international troops as human shields. He added that despite the Israeli Defense Forces' continued calls for withdrawal, UNIFIL has refused to leave. Meanwhile, a 5th UN peacekeeper was shot and wounded in southern Lebanon on Saturday, although the source of the attack is unknown. The injury comes after 2 Indonesian peacekeepers were injured falling from an observation tower after Israeli tanks fired at it on Thursday, while 2 Sri Lankan soldiers were also injured on Friday. In response, 40 countries that have deployed their troops to UNIFIL issued a joint statement on Saturday, strongly condemning the Israeli attack on the peacekeeping force. The joint statement stressed that the role of the peacekeepers was vital in light of the heightened tensions in the region, condemning the recent series of attacks by Israel. It added that such acts must be stopped immediately and be properly investigated. South Korea is among the 40 countries that have sent troops to Lebanon. Meanwhile, more than 60 Israelis were injured in a drone attack conducted by Hezbollah in north-central Israel on Sunday, marking one of the bloodiest attacks since last October. This comes as the Iran-backed militant group said it had launched a swarm of attack drones on an Israeli infantry camp. The militants say the attack was in response to Thursday's Israeli strikes in Lebanon that killed 22 people and injured 117 others. Choi Soo-young, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, Chinese planes and ships surrounded Taiwan amid a large-scale military drill by Beijing in response to recent remarks about independence by Taipei. Our foreign affairs correspondent Pei Eun-ji reports.
This image of a map aired on Chinese state media shows 6 large blocks surrounding Taiwan, indicating the locations where the military drills are being held. The Chinese military said Monday that it has organized its Army, Navy, Air Force, and Rocket Force troops to conduct the Joint SOAR 2024B drills in the Taiwan Strait and north, south, and east of the island. Without saying when the exercises would end, it added that the drills will act as a stern warning to the separatist acts of Taiwan Independence Forces. Taiwan's defense ministry said it detected 25 Chinese aircraft, as well as a total of 7 Chinese warships near the island on Monday morning.
This action of China did not comply with the international regulation that requires one to make an early announcement before a drill, and threatening another country with military power also contradicts the United Nations Charter that emphasizes peaceful settlement of disputes.
The latest military drills are widely seen as an apparent protest against Taiwan's President Lai Ching-te's speech last week, saying that China has no right to represent Taiwan. While emphasizing his determination to defend Taiwan's sovereignty, he said his government is willing to work with Beijing to contribute to international goals, such as achieving global peace.
On this land, democracy and freedom are growing and thriving. The People's Republic of China has no right to represent Taiwan.
Lai, who took office in May, has been rejecting the Chinese government's claims over the island. China, which claims self-governed Taiwan as part of its territory, last held drills surrounding the island in May. It also held massive military exercises around Taiwan in 2022, after then U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi made a brief visit. Peunji, Arirang News.
On the next frontier, SpaceX has taken a remarkable step forward in its quest of creating a completely reusable and swiftly deployable rocket. Our Kim Si-young explains.
SpaceX's fifth Starship test flight saw success on Sunday as the returning first-stage booster of the company's mega rocket was caught by the mechanical arms of its launch tower, achieving a world-first engineering feat and a groundbreaking step towards the company's quest for rapid reusability of its rockets. The Starship rocket, with a payload capacity of up to 150 tons of equipment or a crew of 100 people, had its fifth test launch at SpaceX's Starbase facility in Boca Chica, Texas, where the rocket's first-stage Super Heavy booster lifted off at 7:25 a.m. local time on Sunday. After reaching an altitude of around 70 kilometers, the first-stage booster separated itself from the spacecraft after sending the second-stage rocket towards space and began to make a gravitational return to land. On the way down, the Super Heavy booster relit 3 of its 33 Raptor engines to control the speed of its descent back to the SpaceX's Texas launch pad before the 146-meter-high launch tower's 2 large mechanical arms, called Mechazilla by the company's founder Elon Musk, caught the booster, achieving what a SpaceX spokesperson called a day for the engineering history books. Elon Musk's SpaceX wants to develop a rocket that can one day take humans to the moon and later to Mars, meaning a fully and rapidly reusable rocket would be a great advantage in sustaining limited resources. U.S. space agency NASA has also invested some $2.8 billion in SpaceX to develop the Starship into a space lander capable of sending astronauts to the moon's surface by 2026. Kim Si-young, Arirang News.
And in other news, the latest polls by American broadcasters show a tight presidential race between Democratic candidate Kamala Harris and Republican candidate Donald Trump. A survey by ABC and Ipsos on slightly over 2,600 adults across the U.S. from October 4th to the 8th shows 50% in favor of Harris and 48% behind Trump. Also, in the 7 battleground states, the 2 candidates stood tied at 49%. Meanwhile, a poll conducted by NBC on 1,000 registered voters nationwide during the same period showed Harris and Trump tied at 48%. The U.S. presidential election takes place on November 5th. Back here in capital Seoul late last week, an annual forum on offshore wind power took place between delegates from Korea and Germany amid broader efforts to transition into clean sources of energy. Our correspondent Lee Soo-jin was there.
In South Korea, both the government and private companies are striving to go green. And one of the ways they're striving to do so is by collaborating with other nations to develop offshore wind energy technology. At the 3rd annual Korean-German Business Forum on Offshore Wind Energy held on Friday in Seoul, presentations and discussions were held to discuss ways the 2 countries can collaborate.
Korea has a strong industrial base, particularly in the manufacturing area, and on the other side, Germany has this large experience. We are the 3rd largest country when it comes to offshore wind parks. Additionally, we see a growing interest in cooperation between companies.
Offshore wind energy refers to the generation of electricity by wind turbines located in bodies of water where wind speeds are greater than they are on land. And South Korea has set an ambitious goal of expanding its offshore wind energy capacity to 14.3 gigawatts by 2030. The country has a large potential as it has favorable environmental conditions for generating offshore wind energy.
So Korea has great conditions for fixed bottom turbines on the west coast of Korea. So the water depths are of a very good level to enable foundations to be fixed. And on the east coast, it also offers some advantages for floating offshore wind because it has very deep waters as well. The wind speeds in Korea as well are good for offshore wind, and they will allow to have very efficient renewable energy generated from offshore wind.
In offshore wind energy technology, fixed bottom and floating wind turbines are the two different types of foundations used to anchor the turbines in the water, depending on the depth of the seabed. But while Korea has geographical advantages, there are several major challenges, many of them on the national level.
How do we solve the issue of grid rollout to enable connection of offshore wind farms across the whole of Korea in many areas where offshore wind and the military need to coexist, also with the fisheries as well.
And one way to encourage the passing of bills that will help overcome these challenges is for companies and governments of the two countries to share their experiences and knowledge. With efforts like this to further boost collaboration between South Korea and Germany, Korea will soon be able to usher in an era of offshore wind energy technology. 이수진, Arirang News. And indeed, the transition to clean energy is taking place in small but tangible steps at a camping program over in Korea's southern resort island of Jeju. Our Park Geon-woo has details.
A pleasant eco-friendly camping adventure utilizing renewable energy. This is available on South Korea's largest island, Jeju, by using its plentiful natural resources, including wind power. As part of the net zero target of 2035, Jeju held its first RE100 camping event last week at the Dongbok Bukchon wind farm, sourcing renewable electricity for cooking and lighting the site, among others.
With renewable energy generated from the wind power at the site, you can charge your own phone just like me. Now I'm ready for more eco-friendly experiences. By riding this electric bicycle charged with renewable energy, you can enjoy the beautiful nature of Jeju while breathing in the fresh air.
A total of 100 campers signed up on a first-come, first-served basis enjoyed themselves during the one-night stay.
I've always been interested in recycling, so participating in this was meaningful. I rode an electric bike for the first time and it was fun. I'm looking forward to the barbecue, especially as you can't miss out on eating when camping.
Pork barbecued using electricity generated from wind power, along with farm produce from Jeju including carrots, was served to the campers for dinner. And as the camping was held at a site filled with abundant natural scenery, the campers were able to engage with nature as well. While trekking Gotjawar Forest, a kind of volcanic ecosystem in Jeju, campers had a chance to listen carefully to the sounds of nature with headsets and a small recorder.
I felt really comfortable as I was absorbed in the sounds of nature. It was fun to experience these activities with campers interested in environmental issues. I would like to keep coming here.
An official from the Jeju Tourism Organization is confident that the experience will continue to be popular.
Considering the environment and energy transition is a global trend, various eco-friendly events and content are being made. That's why our renewable energy camping is more unique.
He also said Jeju will be planning many more of these eco-friendly camping programs to bring more tourists to the region down the road. Park Geon-woo, Arirang News, Jeju.
It's cloudy all over the country and rain is falling in some areas today. In particular, the south coast could receive up to 30 millimeters of heavy rain per hour overnight, accompanied by thunder and lightning. Rain in the central and northern parts of the country will stop by tomorrow morning, and the southern parts of Chungcheongdo provinces will have rain until tomorrow afternoon. By tomorrow, the eastern part of the South Sea and the southern part of Jeju Island could be windy, and the waves could be as high as 2.5 meters. Those in this area should pay special attention to coastal safety accidents. Tomorrow, Seoul, Daejeon, and Daegu will start off at 17 degrees Celsius, Gwangju 19 degrees. Highs will be topping out at 24 in Seoul and Daejeon, Gyeongju and Jeju 26 degrees. On Wednesday, it will rain in the eastern parts of Gangwon-do province due to the influence of the easterly winds, and the temperature is expected to drop after rain across the country in the second half of the week. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
Those are the headlines at this hour here in South Korea. Coming up now is our daily panel session. Do stay with us.